I've been roasting coffee at home for many years. My first roaster was a hot air popcorn popper, and then I moved to a Behmor 1600. I've had that Behmor 1600 for over 10 years. I upgraded it to a Plus when they offered that option, and I've been able to roast manually using that coffee roaster, and it's just produced some wonderful coffee. I highly recommend that roaster to anyone that's interested in roasting coffee at home. But it isn't without its troubles or some of its weaknesses. We've talked about that in some of the videos that I've done with the Behmor. Every roasting device you buy and you try is going to have its strengths and weaknesses. One of the things that's been really bothering me, and we've been talking about it here amongst some of us here on the channel with the Behmor, is the temperatures that are being displayed from the machine don't seem to make sense. There's an A temperature and a B temperature, and so I drilled some holes, quite a few holes in my Behmor, trying to find the right placement for probes that would give us some sort of realistic, helpful information. In my last video, I used this drum roaster and we talked about exhaust temperatures. I did that intentionally because I wanted to lay an idea out there that really the exhaust temperature is a very helpful piece of information because it tells us ultimately how much potential energy we have at our disposal that's going to be roasting our beans. So I've placed a probe towards the back and the upper part of the roasting chamber on the Behmor, and for the bean temperature I've moved it towards the front and I've moved it lower so that we can get different temperature readings that may reflect more of a realistic roasting environment. And I say that in a very careful manner because this is all subjective. I've moved these probes around. I've seen temperatures for the Behmor temperatures as low as 300 degrees and as high as 1,000 degrees. The Behmor uses an infrared quartz heating element that heats differently than a gas flame or a hot plate warmer or a electric coil that is heating underneath a roasting chamber and then blowing hot air out. Air roasters, that's what's happening there for most of you. And on the drum roaster, we've got a flame underneath the drum, and that flame is heating the metal, and it's also heating the air, and there's a lot of air movement. The Behmor is different because it's using this quartz light, and the way the light spectrum works with heat with a quartz heating element is it's like a space heater on a floor. If you've noticed, you've tried to warm yourself up with a space heater. That's a little box on the floor with some orange coils. You'll notice that you get really toasty warm really fast, right? But the air doesn't get warm, and that's because the quartz light goes straight through the atmosphere, so to speak, the air, and it's heating objects. So the Behmor is a little unique and a little hard to figure out, but I've placed these probes outside, out of the way of the quartz light. And I did that intentionally because, like I mentioned, I was getting temperature readings of up to 1,000 degrees. The metal probes are directly in the way of that light and they get hot really fast. Now the 1,000 degree temperature was within millimeters of the quartz light, and I think what we're going to see here is something a little more realistic. It's going to help us understand the air temperature in the roasting chamber here in the Behmor, and it's not going to be influenced much by the orange light because it's out of the direct path of that light. So we should see some really interesting temperatures here today. One other thing about the Behmor specifically, and that is that one of the benefits of this quartz light that is heating objects is that it's heating the box. It's heating the inside of the Behmor all over the place on a pre-warm, and I recommend anybody that's using a Behmor to do a pre-warm, at least one pre-warm or two, up to 225 or even 250 degrees, depending upon how much coffee you're roasting at a time. And that way the box gets hot. Everything inside gets hot. I do a pre-warm with sometimes with the drum in, but always with the chaff collector in, because that's going to be more heat that is going to help get the roaster warmed up quicker. So that's a top tip. You should definitely consider that if you haven't done it. The other big factor is coffee weight. The Behmor is rated for up to a pound. Realistically, you're going to be roasting a half a pound of coffee if you want to roast it in under 12 minutes. I'm using 6 ounces, a little under 6 ounces of coffee in this roast because I have a total roast time. I want to be under 12 minutes. I'd like to be more like 10 to 11 minutes. And so we're going to be doing a roast here on this Behmor and seeing how we can do this. The profile that I'm after is a profile that I've been promoting on this channel to start with forever. And that is for the total roast time, let's just say that it is 10 minutes, just for easy math here while we're doing the video. I want half of my roast time to be devoted towards dry, and then 30% of my total roast time devoted towards this browning phase where there's caramelization and the Maillard reactions that are taking place where we get sweetness and the flavors. And then I want to round off this profile with 20% development, or about 20% development. And I want to do that, and the only way I'm going to do that is by having a lighter load with a shorter time. And like I said, my target total roast time is 10 to 11 minutes. All right, pre-warmed to 225. I'm going to do a little bit of gymnastics here. Slide this probe back. Slide out the chaff tray. Slide out the drum. Put the chaff tray back in to keep the stove warm. Doing this single-handed because I don't want to burn myself. Okay. Do this. Okay. There we go. Probe is back in. You can see the probes, the bean probes over to the left. The back probe is the exhaust temperature. That's up towards the top. And then on the left there, the front probe is going to be the bean temperature. And we're going to go ahead and use the half-pound setting, hit the start button, and the default is 12 minutes on the Behmor for a half-pound setting. So I pre-warmed to 225 degrees, and I'm going to press the temperature here in just a second because I want to see what our pre-warm temperature is. There it is, 198 degrees. So we lost 27 degrees, I think, while we opened up the machine and did all that. That metal got hot inside of there, and I did a double warming too. So we kept a lot of the heat, and this is going to help us have a shorter dry time. You'll see the countdown for Artisan. It's showing right now at 5:15 for the projected dry, now under 5 minutes. And this is going to get down to as low as maybe 4:30. But realistically, that may not be the case here with Artisan and with this Behmor. I have no idea how this is going to react. This is my very first roast with these probes in this placement here. We're at a minute, and I'm looking at the temperature. 212 degrees is what's displaying on the Behmor, but the Artisan is registering about 235 degrees. So there is quite a bit of a difference. There's a 25-degree difference. And I think that has to do with the probe placement. The Behmor has its probes internally. The sensors are on the side of the Behmor. And here I've got probes that are positioned in front, still exposed to the light a little bit. So that could be why there is that temperature difference. Look at the exhaust temperature, the red line on the graph. We're approaching 370 degrees, and we're 1 minute and 45 seconds into the roast. That's pretty exciting. There's a lot of energy, and that probe is not in the direct light of the quartz heating element. So I think that's a fairly realistic number. It's towards the top back edge of the chamber, roasting chamber, and so the temperatures are going to be warmer there than further down and further towards the front of the roaster. All right, we're at 2.5, well, we're approaching 2.5 minutes, and we're almost at 300 degrees on the temperature. We've really got a nice, fairly quick roast going, and that is due to the pre-warming, and it's due to the lighter load on the beans. So if you're trying to roast coffee and get shorter roast times, you may want to consider using less green beans, just a smaller amount of coffee when you roast, and chances are that's going to roast faster depending upon your roasting device. Notice the exhaust temperature is still climbing. We're at 425 degrees. My max display here is 450. I'm going to have to change this here in a minute. I'm going to check the temperatures, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the display so that red line won't disappear on us. 2 minutes or 279 degrees, and we are coasting along here really good. And I'm going to make my adjustment to the axis point. You can do this while you're roasting. I'm going to set it for 500 degrees. That should give us plenty of room. We'll see. And yeah, so here we are, 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Bean temperature on Artisan is displaying 350 degrees, 356, and the Behmor is at 289. So 60 degree difference-ish, and that's pretty significant. We're going to talk about how to understand these temperature differences and what we should do, but I just really wanted you to see how these probes are reading inside of the Behmor, because I think other people have done this online. I've seen one video where somebody was able to find a way to get the probe actually into the bean mass. That was pretty cool. All right, we're at 4 minutes and 10 seconds, 375 degrees, and on my drum roaster, I'm usually close to dry around 330 to 340 degrees. 320 to 340 is my range. On the Behmor, we're at 382 degrees, and I haven't hit dry yet. I'm just about to hit dry, I think, here. I'm looking at the color, getting a good look. We're getting really close, and I just want to make sure that I get the timing right on this. Marking your times, your events, at the right time is really important, because if you mark it at the wrong time, then your phase percentages aren't really going to be helpful for you. We're going to take another peek, 310, 311 degrees. And the coffee's looking really close here. And I think we're ready. The fan just kicked on the Behmor at 5 minutes. This is an event I wanted you guys to see. I have been at P5 the entire time. I have not changed the power settings. The fan kicked on, and both the exhaust temp and the bean temp on Artisan have dropped. Now, at P5, I was approaching 325 degrees, and I think we're at 320. I think maybe we're still close to 325 degrees. But I'm remaining at full power. The temperature is definitely not climbing inside of the Behmor according to the Behmor temperatures. And according to Artisan, the temperatures have dropped from 380 degrees down to 340 degrees. So we've lost 40 degrees in our bean temp compared to before that fan kicked on. But you'll see that it's going to recover here quickly, and we'll start to climb again. 318 degrees. I've adjusted my temperature now to P4. You can see that line. If you look on Artisan, you'll see there's a thin burgundy line that goes across horizontally right to the center of the screen. So I went from a 5 setting down to a 4 setting, and I'm marking that for you on the display. 316 degrees on the Behmor, And look at the exhaust temperature. On P4 setting, the exhaust stopped climbing and it has now more or less gone horizontal. And it's going to drop slightly. You can see the red dashed arm ever so slightly starting to edge downward. And I'm okay with that because I want to slow my my middle phase down. I want to give a little more time for my middle phase. If I were to have kept P5 on the entire time, I would have rushed to first crack and the flavor development that we're looking for. That is the caramelization, the sweetness that takes place, as well as the Maillard reactions that take place during this time while we're roasting would be greatly shortened, and we would have a coffee that did not taste good. It could be just super tart, or it might even be slightly vegetal because it could be under roasted inside because we roasted too fast. So I want to slow the roast down, and that's why I've lowered my temperature to P4. I could go to P3, and I'm going to do that and toggle back and forth a little bit here, but I don't want to lose too much momentum. I want to keep my momentum going. So I've got a nice, easy, slightly downward trend in my temperatures, and I verified that on the Artisan, and I verified that on the Behmor. There's the exhaust temperature that's showing. The exhaust temperature for those that use it, I know one of the users here on my channel, Larry, swears by the exhaust temperature, and he has learned to roast great coffee on the Behmor using both the A and the B temperatures while he roasts. The A temperature does not turn on or is not available until the fan kicks on, and in this case that would have been 5 minutes. So it stays at 129 until 5 minutes, and then it slowly starts to climb. Making an adjustment here, I want to get, for some reason, the Artisan thought that the coffee had dropped. So while you're roasting, if something like that happens, you can make that adjustment on the fly. So I've removed the time from the drop, and I'm adding it to first crack. First crack didn't get the time when I hit first crack, but instead it dropped. So I'm making that correction right now. And then watch what happens. The first crack time will show up, and you'll see my development percentage start to show. And there it is. I'm at 9, almost 10% development. Temperatures are slowly starting to drop, and I've got the safety button that just showed up that I had to hit on the Behmor. Behmor users, you know what that is. And if you don't, Behmor has a safety feature so that if you're not in the room, at a certain period of time, this warning appears, and if you're not there to hit the start button, then Behmor thinks you've left it unattended, and it will just go into the cool mode if you don't catch it quick enough. All right, we're at 15% development. Temperatures are slowly coming down still. Crack is just finishing up. I had a nice slow rolling first crack, which is great. I like that. I don't like hard, fast cracks because that means I have too much momentum. If you run into first crack and it just explodes, then you might want to consider slowing down so that you can have some good development without getting your coffee too dark. Unless that's what you're trying to do, then go ahead and keep doing that. All right, here we go. Cool, open the door, and you'll see the temperatures drop here immediately. And I'm going to have to go back because Artisan did not mark the drop on this, and so I'm going to go back here in just a minute and I'll make that correction. Getting the drum out and the coffee into a cooling tray as quickly as I can so that that roasting process stops. Looked like I had pulled this out right at about 20% development, maybe just a hair before that is when the roast ended. And so I'm going to go ahead and go into Artisan and make those corrections. All right, in Artisan, we take a look at what we ended up with our roast here. It looked really great. I don't like a dark coffee. I like a medium coffee. I like my beans to have a slight wrinkle to them so they're not getting shiny and round. A couple things that I want to look at. I want to look at the phase percentages. First, let's look at that. Up towards the top, 5 minutes and 42 seconds for dry. That's a 55% dry phase. And then a 2 minute and 36 second browning phase, giving me a 25% browning phase, which is a little shorter than I wanted, but it's okay. And then 19.7% development. So all in all, it was a half decent roast. I was fairly happy with that. I know it's going to taste, it's definitely drinkable. It's definitely going to be an enjoyable cup. It's not how I normally aim for. I like to have a little bit shorter dry phase, and I like to have a little bit longer middle phase. So 50% or less on the green there, which is the dry, and 30% for the orange, which is the browning phase. One other thing I wanted to point out, other than the temperature dropping, in some of my experiments, I opened the door on the Behmor, and it lost about 5 or 10 degrees, and then quickly went back up. Now, the probe is right near the front of the door, and so it was probably more sensitive, but it regained really quickly. So opening the door really quick, like for 1 or 2 seconds to get a good look at the color, isn't going to hurt your roast. It's not going to really have a great impact on your roast. Okay, so what did I learn from this, and what's important for me to convey to anyone who has a Behmor? And that is that it's a great roaster, and regardless of the reputation that it has, you can see that we have a roast that was 10 minutes and 20 seconds long. It's not a pound of coffee, but we have a roast that's 10 minutes and 20 seconds long, and we're also able to control the temperature over time, which helps us achieve the phase percentages that we aim for to craft the flavor in our coffee. So this roaster is fully capable of doing that. The temperatures that display on the Behmor are fine. They are different. I don't think they're necessarily accurate, but that really isn't important. I think the most important takeaway is that you get familiar with the temperatures that are being presented on the display, and then you roast coffee so that when you get to dry and you see what your temperature is on the Behmor, then you can correlate those two. You can kind of say, okay, well, this is a temperature that I've just experienced getting to the end of dry. When you get to first crack, the temperatures that you read and you experience, whether it's the A temperature or the B temperature, if you're writing these things down and journaling your roasts, you'll be able to have fairly predictable, repeatable roasts because you're familiarizing yourself with the temperature display, the temperatures that are being presented to you by your roasting device. If you don't have a Behmor and you have another type of a roaster, regardless of what it is, the exact same thing applies to you. Your temperatures that are being presented to you are the temperatures from the roasting device, and that's fine. Whether they're accurate or not isn't as important as you correlating the temperatures that are being presented to you and how that relates to what phase, what the coffee looks like, the color of the coffee, the smell that you're smelling of the coffee, all of those things, so that the next time you roast that coffee and you get to that temperature that's being displayed on your roaster, assuming you're using the same coffee and the same weight of coffee and the same recipe or processes, you should experience the same type of aromas. You should see the same color. And so you'll be able to create repeatable events based on your experience with the temperatures and with what you're seeing and using with your senses. All right, before I ask the questions, if you like the content as you've seen, hit the like button right now. That really helps me out. That tells YouTube that you've enjoyed this content, and they will share that with other home coffee roasters. Also, if you have not subscribed to my channel, please do that. It doesn't cost you anything, and you'll be notified or see my videos show up in your feed. If you want to be notified, hit the bell, and you'll be alerted as soon as I upload videos. All right, so questions for you guys. Do you have a Behmor roaster, and have you been wondering what's happening with your temperatures? What this light is all about? I know there's been a lot of questions about drum speed, about the A button and the B button. If you've got questions about your Behmor, ask them here in the comments. That would be great. If you have hooked up Artisan or some other roasting logging software to your Behmor and you want to share that experience, do that in the comments as well. I'd love to read that. If you have another type of a roaster and you heard me talking about phase percentages or pre-warming or some of the behavior that Artisan experienced, I saw Artisan kind of get a little quirky here for me. Share those comments as well and let me know your thoughts on that. All right, thanks for joining me here today. I really appreciate it. We've got more videos coming. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you guys have a great week roasting. We'll see you next time.